Welcome back, everybody, to the KC Sports Report. I'm your host, Michael Darcy, and today I have the luxury to be joined by my good friend Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com and ArrowheadAddict.com. And today we're going to discuss the recent news involving Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice and if the Chiefs need to go out and trade for a new number one wide receiver because of his injury. So, Josh, we just got a big update in the Rashee Rice injury from Adam Schefter on Twitter, saying that there still remains a lot of uncertainty over the extent of his injury. And so we initially thought that he tore his ACL and that he would be out for the season, but it seems like there's, a holdup in the diagnosis, and maybe we got some good news on the horizon regarding his health status going forward. But first and foremost, I want to get your thoughts on Rashee Rice's injury, and what do you think it's going to end up being for the wide receiver one?
Well, it didn't look good on TV, right? And you could just tell the mood kind of changed after he got hurt. He was carted off. That's never good. Yeah. His face was in his towel. And to literally add insult to injury was Patrick Mahomes, who essentially caused it. Throwing that pick and then trying to get into the scrum and dove headfirst into his wide receiver one's knee. Not good. Based on what we're hearing, it seems like the fact that the ACL wasn't immediately discovered as being torn feels like it may be a positive sign that it's not as bad as we thought. But it seems like the Chiefs are going into this with worst case scenario in mind, and anything else other than that would be awesome news. Either way, he's slated to miss an extended amount of time. Could be like a Hollywood Brown type situation where he misses the entire regular season. You just cross your fingers back. He'll be ready for the postseason, but I think the Chiefs would be otherwise smart to prepare for life without their wide receiver 1 and 2 for the rest of the year.
I think you have to prepare for the worst. And if you saw that injury yesterday, it looked really brutal. I mean, it was a guy that clearly was in a lot of pain. The towel over his face, he got carted off. I think that you have to assume that whatever happened to his knee, it's going to be a substantial injury that keeps him out most of, if not the entire season. Personally, I've already ruled him out for the remainder of this season. But the fact that we haven't heard anything about, the torn ACL diagnosis, I said it on your channel, no news is good news. But at the same time, I don't want Chiefs fans having this, sense of optimism regarding his injury when that might not be a smart decision, because I think he probably did tear his ACL, but his knee is just so swollen. They haven't been able to figure out and properly diagnose that injury. So I think that it's smart for us to plan for Rashee Rice not being in the picture. And that leads to the question, do the Chiefs need to trade for another wide receiver? Now, I talked about this possibility yesterday on the channel, threw out a couple different names, but Josh, I wanted to get your thoughts on some wide receivers that the Chiefs could go out and trade for that would make this team better.
Yeah, so real quick, just going back to what you said about Rashee Rice, I wanted to add on one more thing to that. So, I think that the swelling probably is the issue right now. They're not able to get a clear picture of what's going on. That would be my guess, but I would still think there's pretty significant damage. But maybe, just hopefully, it was a major hyperextension with a bone bruise and maybe an MCL sprain. But you just got to cross your fingers that there was no tearing of ligaments, but we'll see what happens. I think I'm with you. No news is good news as of right now. So as far as wide receivers they could trade for, there's definitely guys out there. I think you have to go and get one because you're down your wide receiver 1 and 2 for almost essentially the entire 2024 season, and that's just not a situation we want for this offense. It's not a situation we want for Travis Kelce or rookie Xavier Worthy. I think on paper it's a worse situation than last year when that offense was really bad, and you just want to try to avoid that scenario. And there was a play yesterday, Michael, and that I think is going to really stick in general manager Brett Veach's mind when it comes to making a decision of trading for someone, and it's going to be that third down play to Sky Moore that hit him in the hands. And it's like, okay, if we're targeting Sky Moore on third down, we are an unserious offense right now, personnel-wise. We have to go out and get someone, and even Brett Veach slammed his fist down on the table after that play to Sky Moore, and I think he knew. You had to go and get someone Couple names that immediately come to mind are Deontay Johnson of the Carolina Panthers. Not in a great situation right now, unrestricted free agent after this year, and the Panthers don't seem to be going anywhere. Amari Cooper from the Cleveland Browns is another one, very similar situation, except Browns are in the AFC, so we'd have to see if they'd be willing to deal with the Chiefs, but
Yeah.
they don't seem to be going anywhere. Deshaun Watson's contract seems like a massive dud right now. But Amari Cooper is extremely affordable. DeAndre Hopkins is another one. Tyler Boyd, really the entire Titans wide receiver core I'd be calling about. The entire Carolina Panthers receiving core I'd be calling about. Those are really the ones that come to mind first thing.
Well, and something that's interesting that Joshua Briscoe mentioned on Twitter is that, the whole Rashee Rice injury is also overshadowed by the fact that he's also going to have to serve a suspension at some point. So maybe the Chiefs should be looking at trading for a wide receiver that has a couple years left on his contract. And so I've seen crazy names like Cooper Kupp and DeAndre Hopkins getting traded to the Chiefs. And while I think that Hopkins has more, merits to getting traded to the Chiefs than Kupp does, I think that the Chiefs are going to have to go out there and make a splash because this is serious, Josh. I mean, that third down, missed completion to Sky Moore, I think it kind of signifies what this offense will be without a new wide receiver in the mix. And so I think there's more pressure than ever for Brett Veach to pull the trigger and go pull off a move because they don't have anybody else. They're relying so heavily on Xavier Worthy and Juju Smith-Schuster to carry the load of this entire offense. And realistically, that is not going to work out. And so Amari Cooper, I think, is a great option. He's inexpensive, and I think that he would fit a lot of what the Chiefs are looking for. A veteran wide receiver who's very crafty. The only thing that I'm going to say about him is he has had some problems with drops this year. And so that's not really an issue I want the Chiefs going out and trading for. But listen, maybe a change of scenery helps him out a lot. Deshaun Watson's not exactly playing great football right now. And so maybe changing, quarterbacks could do Cooper the world of good. But I do think that there is more pressure than ever for Brett Veach to go out and trade for a wide receiver. Deontay Johnson's another great option. Really anybody from a team that is not doing very well. Like you said, like the Titans and the Carolina Panthers. I would even throw the Cleveland Browns in there. Listen, if you could get Jerry Jeudy, I know that's a very lofty goal, but Jerry Jeudy has some years of team control, and that could be a great acquisition for the Chiefs.
Yeah, again, there's a lot of these teams where you could be calling about their entire wide receiver core, and I like where you're coming from with trading for a wide receiver that has multiple years because we may not see Rashee Rice for a year and a half. Also, Hollywood Brown is only on a 1-year deal. You're probably going to have to go out and get a veteran anyway next year, so why not get a guy that you could get under team control? I also don't hate the idea of trading for a guy like Deontay Johnson, though, and then just extending him if he does well, or Amari Cooper even. I wouldn't be as excited about doing that just because he's already over that age of 30, and I think he's on the downward trend of his career, and Brett Veach typically just doesn't pay guys like that. Cooper Kupp is an interesting one because he'd probably be the best option if we're really going to talk about a guy like that. But also at the same time, he's a guy that gets hurt a lot, and you're already down your top two wide receivers because of injury. I'm not sure adding another injury-riddled wide receiver would be the answer. Another interesting one I've seen brought up by a couple people, and I'm curious what you think about this, is Davante Adams, because head coach Antonio Pierce liked to post on Instagram saying that Davante Adams has played his last game as a Raider, and things are not going well there. Davante Adams seems very frustrated with them week in and week out. There seems to be a new outburst on the sidelines with him. Obviously, though, Michael, the massive holdup is they're in the division, and maybe they don't want to help the Chiefs. But I feel like if the Chiefs dangle a good enough draft pick, I mean, what else are you supposed to do if you're the Raiders in that scenario? Are you going to stiff arm the Chiefs to take the worst deal?
It would take a king's ransom to go trade for Davante Adams. Adams is a great wide receiver. I think the possibility of the Raiders trading interdivisionally and giving the Chiefs a giant asset like Adams is unlikely. But the thought of Davante Adams in a Chiefs uniform gives me chills. I think that he would, make this offense like 10 times better and give you so much more at the wide receiver position than even Rashee Rice. But again, the odds that the Raiders would trade him to the Chiefs, being in the same division and being in the same conference, I think is very unlikely. And that honestly brings up the biggest holdup for a lot of these teams. I wonder if a team like the Browns or a team like the Titans would trade with the Chiefs being in the AFC, because we've seen like the Bills won't trade with us. You think that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to trade with us? Like, there's many teams in the AFC that simply will not do business with the Kansas City Chiefs because they are so good. And so that is a massive holdup when we're talking about guys they could trade for. Would that team be willing to give that, weapon to the Chiefs offense? And the answer for some teams is a straight up no. And so that is just another level of negotiation and just another hurdle that Brett Veach and his front office is going to have to jump over. But I do think that some of the options that we've talked about, like Amari Cooper and not Devontae Adams, but DeAndre Hopkins, have the most merit, because I think that the Chiefs not only need to go out and get a good wide receiver, they need to make a splash at the wide receiver position to replace not only Rashee Rice, but also Hollywood Brown. And I think that the guys that we just mentioned could really mentor Xavier Worthy and some of the younger guys on this team and be an overall positive for this offense. But it's going to cost you something. And Josh, are you willing to give up all that capital?
Obviously, depends on the player, depends how much, but I definitely think Brett Veach should be aggressive in trading draft picks, because you're trying to do something that no other NFL team has ever done. You're trying to become the best team of all time and one of the greatest dynasties in all of sports history. And with that on the line, I think you really have to consider it. And Peter Schrager, we mentioned this on the video I did, but I was watching Peter Schrager earlier today on Colin Cowherd's show on FS1, and he said, or I'm going to paraphrase what he said, but essentially is like, are you really going to, keep on to those draft picks and pass up on getting a great wide receiver at a run for the three-peat so you can get a backup left tackle in the draft? Like, come on. Like, what are you doing here? Especially with Brett Veach's rather sketchy draft history in the early rounds over the past few years. I think I'd rather trade one of those draft picks for a proven stud wide receiver.
Absolutely. And listen, the Chiefs need to be in win now mode. I understand that, a couple of years ago when they were trying to build this dynasty up, they weren't going to just give away players. They weren't just going to throw away draft capital, but you're in a position that very few teams will ever be in, and that's the opportunity of three-peating. And so I would not hate it if the Chiefs go all out. We talk about the contract they gave Frank Clark back in 2018, 2019. That was the price of the Super Bowl. They did that because they thought that Frank Clark would push them over the edge. They might have to go out and overpay for a wide receiver. If they three-peat, it will be worth it in the end. And I don't really care too much about what giving up a third, fourth, or fifth round draft pick is going to have on the future of this team. I trust the Chiefs front office to make the right draft selections when they have picks. And if you could get a proven commodity at the wide receiver position mid-season, I think you have to go out and do that, and it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think that, again, we talked about this on my channel. If you're the Kansas City Chiefs, if you lose in the postseason and it's for any other reason outside of wide receiver play, I think fans would much more accept that, because it'll be, okay, it just wasn't your year, right? Three-peating is extremely hard. If the Chiefs go out there in the postseason and they lose directly because of the passing game or wide receiver play, and Brett Veach doesn't address the wide receiver position, he has no one to blame but himself.
Yeah, and what I said on your channel, the Chiefs are cursed because they had these injuries, but at the same time, they're blessed they happened so early on in the season. Brett Veach can fix this. It's not going to be easy, but Brett Veach can go out and correct all of these issues by giving away some future draft capital to bring in the answer to the problem of the Chiefs wide receiver room. And so I think that if you're Brett Veach, what you have to do is simple, but you just have to go out and do it, because you can't be complacent. You can't believe that you have the options in-house to fix this thing, because you don't. And I don't think that he's going to make that mistake, but it's going to be imperative that he goes out there and is aggressive at the trade deadline, because if he's not, I think this Chiefs team is going to piss away a great opportunity to do something that no other team has ever done.
Yeah, I'm with you there, man. I think that this is not one where you can scrape by with the guys that you have, because on paper, this offense just looks worse than last year. It's decimated. Almost no other team could even think of surviving without their wide receiver 1 and 2 and their running back 1. But you have a chance to do something special here, and I think you just have to go out and make a move.
I could not agree more. Josh, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to be interested to see what happens here over the next couple of days, what plays out. If we get any more updates on the Rashee Rice situation, see how bad that injury is. Regardless, though, I think you have to make a move for a wide receiver, because I thought that already even before the injury.
I could not say it better myself. I think the Chiefs have got to go out and trade for a wide receiver, maybe even 2 wide receivers if the price is right. And I think that Rashee Rice is probably going to be out for the remainder of the season. But again, no news is good news in terms of injury status. And so maybe we get some great news regarding Rashee Rice's injury. I just hope that Chiefs fans are not getting their hopes up quite yet. So Josh, my final question for you is, where can the people find you?
You can find me here on YouTube, Show Me Football. You can check out my content on Twitter at ShowMeFB. And then, of course, most of my work is going to be on arrowheadaddict.com and showmefootball.com as far as writing goes.
All of that stuff will be linked in the description of this video. As for me, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. We are so close to 7,000 subscribers, and so I'd love to hit that in the next couple days. You can also follow me on social media, Instagram and TikTok, KC_Sports Report, and Twitter at KC Sports Report. Become a Pen Play member today. The link is in the description for that. Thanks for watching this video, guys, and go Chiefs.